Hi, welcome to One Word a Day. I'm Sophia, pilot into the universe of Chinese. Let's continue our unpacking of a well-wishing, typically happen in New Year time, right? Expressions in January. Okay, 年年有余. This one is so common that as a Chinese, I hear it every year, very often. Not only like to me, because I was young back then, but between neighbors, between households, between friends. 年年有余 is the wishing that somebody every year, year after year, that you're going to have surplus, you're going to have enough. So I guess this fear of not having enough is kind of universal, right? In the East West, back in the past, in the present, we all have this sense of what if we don't have enough? And this wishing somebody having enough and a surplus then comes into our vocabulary to well wish people doing good enough that they are going to have surplus. Okay, 年年有余. I want to point out the difference between English and Chinese, that English cannot say year, but Chinese can. 年年 is Chinese way to say year after year. And this after, I put it in parentheses there, is implied. That's Chinese efficiency or economy in expressing this concept. Because when you say year, 年年, it implies that it's going to be sequential year after year. So you don't really need to put a after in there. Like a human living experience would, common sense would give you, will tell you what that means, right? So there is this distinction between Chinese and English. And English, I guess, have to make it grammatically and logically explicit and correct as possible. So I guess English is probably more computer friendly because they do have a lot of connecting word, a lot of grammatical structures to make the meaning as understandable as possible. Versus Chinese is kind of, we just say it. We don't have to say everything. We actually say, I guess some communication theory of this is a low communication language. We imply and assume a lot of things when we express. So here's a case. 年年 made of this human backing or holding the crops, the harvest on the back. So this harvest is made of this upward turning trident, downward turning, convex, concave, connected with the stalk, right? And then with the tilt, this tilt is critical to make sure it means it's ripe, it's plant or your crop that's ripe at the end of the year, that it's leaf bending or stalk bending. And this gives you a visual indicator to mean it's ripe. It's so heavy it's going to fall under its own weight, something like that, right? And that's the crop. And I guess crop in English as well, right? It means it's harvest. It's growing into its full ripe state before you harvest, right? There's no sense you cut it earlier. So in that case, it means crop. And then the back holding, I don't know, this is pretty abstract. I cannot really tell why this means back holding something. We know human figure in English looks like this or this. I mean, most likely this, but this one looks a little bit different. It has this two leg standing thing. And then there, I don't know, this horizontal line may be a marker to mean this is on the back side. But visually, it's too abstract to visualize that's on your backside. But with this horizontal intersecting supposedly the backside of a person, that's how it's abstractly pointing out it's it's the backside. Even if visually it doesn't really look like you should bend the other way, right? I mean, if I write it logically, it would be human figure like this, and then I have the curve. Instead of bending this way, I have the curve bending this way, and then have this indicator, this intersecting on this bending side. That's the back, but this is doing the other way. So midstream. Okay. Back carrying crop. That's the signifier to mean after a full year of hard working, your farming activity comes to an end. Your year comes to an end. So that's a indirect. So Chinese oftentimes create visuals that's indirectly implying this is concurring, because when you are back carrying your crop, that's when the year is coming to an end. Okay. 有 three-finger hand symbol, this omega looking shape with two kind of slanted curved lines is a symbol for meat. So as the main source of protein back then, having meat is a major have. I guess we can even go the timeline a little bit earlier than the agrarian society, which Chinese language and culture and characters get birth from. But this can maybe trace back to the hunter-gatherer society before you have domesticated animals as your food source. Like if you hunter-gatherer society, you have to hunt for the food, right? You have to gather for the food. It's mobile and it's not guaranteed. I guess gathering is more guaranteed food source than hunting. Hunting, I mean, where animals shows doesn't depend on you, right? It's a currency out of your control. So this having meat by your hand is, in a certain way, it's out of luck. And in another way, it means it's a rare occurrence. Not everybody have. So in English, we have this haves and have-nots, right? As if having some particular thing split the population into two groups, haves and have-nots. So in Chinese ancient times, this distinction would be have meat and don't have meat. So I guess this protein critical sense expressed in this have character. Okay, and yu means surplus. I'm putting a very similar looking character right next to it in hope of finding some inspirations of how to understand this is surplus. Let me give it a try. I may not get it right in the first strike. I mean, over my 4th year of doing one word a day, I keep revising my theories, keep come up with the new ones. And sometimes I forget what I said before, right? But I like this process. It is true discovery. It's out of imagination and appreciation. I try to put myself in the shoes of language creator to try to think like them. When I create, maybe these two characters are created side by side, or maybe not. But when you know the meaning of the other character, which means giving up, then you kind of mean, okay, this means surplus. This means giving up. And both of them share this structure. And the only difference is at the bottom. So then we can kind of fill in the blanks of why this thing means surplus. And well, this shape means giving up. Okay. First, the shared part. This triangle thing in Chinese, that means gathering. And this trident looking thing is an organic, a plant symbol. So we have plant gathering. I guess that's also related to crops. Okay, crop, like farming is the main activity, right? That's the main food source. Meat is a rare have. So that's not really expected. Habit is being lucky. the food source, like crops, it's something sort of semi under your control, right? Given the weather condition favorable this year. And gathering of plants means it's a farming activity. So you I guess to a certain density, you plant these plants and have a gathering of these plants. That means it's farming, it's agriculture. And then at the bottom, one is open, like 3 of them, that becomes surplus. And one is O-shape, that means gave up. So if it's related to plant gathering, and the open end means you have a surplus, and the closed end means gave up. Could it be that the ancient language creators are thinking about having this O shape means an empty space? So you have your plant gathering on the top, but it's sitting on top of an empty space. That means you clear out what you gathered on the top here. The plant you gathered, at the end, you clear it out. One interpretation, okay. And here, the 3 strokes vertical with the 2 side ones kind of on a curve. We saw the symbol on the icon for forecasting. And at the time, I interpreted it as past, present, and future. I guess I can use the same mentality or theory of past, present, future. So you have this gathering of plant, and this farming activity, you have it last year, you're going to have it this year, and expect to have it the next year. And that gives you a sense of continuation. And with continuation of farming, very likely you're going to create a surplus. So the crops from last year can still carry over for this year to feed people this year, while you're having new crops growing this year. So I'm guessing this is related to how farming goes, that if you're going to have this continuation, like 3 years in a row farming, that's considered a good, and also this 3 years in a row is our abstraction of 3 years in a row. It's not literally meaning 3 years in a row. It means continuation, your past, present, future. Over time, you're going to have this gathering of plant, and it's only going to compound, right? More plant growing more. So that's a sign for creating surplus. Versus an oval shape seems like, I mean, it's a, I'm not sure it's related, but Chinese have period sign as an oval shape. Not oval shape, but actually a circle, small, tiny little circle. That's Chinese period versus English. English is just a dot, like a black full dot. But Chinese have this stop sign as a circle, tiny circle, but still you can see the emptiness inside. So the stop put it in a circle was a creation later as a punctuation, because Chinese used to have no punctuation at all. We just character written in this way, and you just go figure, okay? And the punctuation is, I guess, Western language form in a written form to facilitate understanding of the message. So at least over here, when you finish a meaning group, you're going to put a period over there. So Chinese, they eventually adopt the system, but instead we put our own spin to it. When we want to come to a stop of the sentence, we put an empty, almost like a 0 sign at the end. And I'm kind of trying to relate. Doesn't mean it's a stop sign. That's a full stop. And doesn't mean the gathering of plants coming to a full stop, meaning you're giving up your land, or giving up this continuation of farming activity. you're kind of giving up your worldly attachments. And Chinese use this 数 oftentimes in Buddhism context of only when you're stripping yourself off such earthly attachments, 数, okay, and then you have a chance to go into kind of a purified state of being that's not material dependent. Like regardless you have or have not, regardless of what kind of classification you're labeled by society, by material, you're not going to be dependent on that. You're set free in a sense. So 没有舍,没有得, we're saying no giving up, like a zero full stop of material ownership or farming activity in the sense, no gain, like no finally get it. Okay, it's going too deep out of my league now, but I'm glad I come up with some theory right there on the spot because I haven't thought through before the episode. And I would like to view that 是 means putting a full stop of farming, and the surplus meaning continuation year over year of farming, and that gives you eventually the surplus. So 年年有余, Chinese visualize it with a fish because 鱼, same pronunciation, different Chinese character. So Chinese just grab this symbol of fish to represent this abstract concept of surplus. So every year you have fish, meaning every year you have surplus. And this is one of the main outstanding artists in China over 100 years ago, that he used this sort of abstraction, right? It's not realistic depicting. I mean, Chinese paintings to start with never been the Western way, just realistically render something with perspective and all that, right? It's not a realistic one, but because it's not a realistic one, things got interesting. It's not what you see in the reality. It's what the artists see through the filter of the artist's eye and representing that to us. And he used it in this traditional Chinese ink over paper format. Things are super simplified. You only have limited palette, which is a grayscale, and the only color is the stamp in red. I mean, that's a traditional thing. And then the figures, the images are kind of with a certain randomness and uncontrolled, almost like Jackson Pollock, I forgot which way, does this spring of random, letting the paint fall to its places, let gravity play a role there, right? It's kind of similar in Chinese ink over paper painting, because how the ink are going to be diffused on paper is, you sort of know, but you're not 100% in control. It's not like a visual art today. You can control pixel over pixel, make it perfect. But it's the imperfection and randomness. And it turned out in the end very good. And then that's the charm of Chinese ink over paper type of art painting. And this is simply 年年有余, visualized as have plenty of fish every year, right? Cash into the currency of thinking back one, what a day, base of easy another day.